And welcome to the latest edition of the Colorado Beer Trail. I'm Jim Burris, and we're joined here with our special guest, Steve Parr. He's the Assistant Director of the American Homebrewers Association, headquartered in Boulder, Colorado, probably a ground zero trailhead for all of you Colorado Beer Trail followers. Steve, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Glad you could join us.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what's the American Homebrewers Association about? What's it do?
So the American Homebrewers Association is an organization that advocates for the hobby of homebrewing. Basically, we do whatever we can to promote and protect the hobby. Primarily what we do, though, is provide educational resources. So we have our website, homebrewersassociation.org, and then we have our magazine, Symergy Magazine. We promote homebrewing through our events.
Okay.
We have the National Homebrewers Conference that we move around the country to different locations. We were just in Grand Rapids, Michigan earlier this year, and we'll be in San Diego next year for our Homebrewers Conference. We also have the National Homebrew Competition, one of the largest brewing competitions in the world at 9,000 entries. And then we also do small events at breweries all across the country for our members called AHA rallies. And then we're actually pretty heavily involved with dealing with homebrew legislation across the country.
And that's been pretty key because homebrewing was able to really take off, what is 1976 when Jimmy Carter...
1978.
78, okay.
Yep.
And that's when Jimmy Carter made brewing at home
they
legal again.
Federally legalized homebrewing in 1978. Unfortunately, at the state level, that wasn't necessarily the case everywhere. And so it wasn't until, not this last summer, but 2 summers ago, that homebrewing was legalized in all 50 states. Mississippi and Alabama were the last 2 to do it.
I'll be darned. Well, tell us a little bit about what somebody gets when they join the American Homebrewers Association. What does it cost? What are the benefits?
Sure. So $43 for a 1-year membership. Every 2 months, you get Symergy Magazine in the mail. I know one of the reasons many people join is for our discount program, AHA member deals. You get discounts at more than 1,000 brewing locations, breweries, brew pubs, restaurants, homebrew supply shops. Just flash your card and you get a discount there. Online and educational content. So homebrewersassociation.org has back issues of Symergy dating back to the year 2000. Obviously, attendance to the conference, you'd have to be an AHA member. Entering our competition, you would need to be an AHA member. AHA members here in Colorado especially enjoy access to pre-sale tickets to the Great American Beer Festival. Is certainly a favorite one as well.
So if you're an AHA member, just to be clear, you actually get a little advance ability to purchase a Great American Beer?
1 day prior to the public sale, tickets go on sale to AHA members.
That's probably worth a $43 membership right there.
Sure.
Great. And what else?
And so actually with our conference, one of the greatest educational resources, you can actually go on and pull all of the conference recordings from past seminars. And so, for example, at our conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan, we had 80 different brewing seminars spanning all different types of topics from entry-level homebrewing to more advanced level stuff. And you can go back and you can download those seminars and listen to them.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, it's now the kind of the season for gifting, and as a home brewer myself and the American Homebrewers Association, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what somebody would want to do. I mean, in addition to joining the American Homebrewers Association, that would involve getting a starter kit or getting involved in homebrewing.
Well, certainly homebrewing is a great next logical step for somebody that's a beer enthusiast that kind of wants to learn more about the brewing process. Great place to go is your local homebrew supply shop. If you actually go to the Homebrewers Association website, we have an online directory of every single homebrew supply shop in the country, and so you can find the one closest to you. Go in there and talk to them. These guys literally have a business that's dedicated to making sure that you're going to make the best beer possible. So they're going to have all the equipment that you're going to need to get started and set you up. Many of them actually have homebrewing seminars where you can go in. They're going to literally hold your hand through the brewing process and make sure that that first batch of beer that you make is going to be the best one. And
so for a starter kit, a typical starter kit, depending on what you have at home
as
far as...
a lot of it depends on what you have at home. I'd say anywhere from $80 to $120 is going to set you up with everything that you need to brew a kit. And then obviously the ingredients, I'd say a basic recipe kit, $35 to $50. The more alcohol that's going to be in that beer recipe, the more expensive it's going to be because it's going to require more ingredients.
And a typical kit brews about 2.5 cases of beer, correct? 5 gallons?
Yep, 5-gallon batch.
Okay. So let's go through real quick what a starter kit looks like, because I have some of the gear.
Sure, bring it up here.
So obviously, first of all, you would need one of these a stock pot. Okay.
Yes.
So you need a good sized stock pot, something that'll hold at least 2.5 gallons.
Yeah. So when you're getting involved, your first batch is most likely going to be an extract batch with home brewing, and so a pot that's 1.5 to 5 gallons is generally the range. And so something like this is definitely going to work. I think when you're thinking about gifts to get somebody, one of the great pieces that you can upgrade is going from your just regular kitchen pot to a big, large brew kettle. But this is a great place to start, and that's going to get you going where you need to be.
Just real quick, this actually is a wort chiller that I have in here. Not part of the normal beginner's kit, but this device is basically copper wire that will cool down your wort when you're getting ready to pitch your yeast. But that's another story. Anyway, what are some of the benefits of a larger pot? So, this is what I brewed in for years. Then I upgraded to a big kind of kitchen, commercial kitchen style that I could put a full 5+ gallons in. What's the benefit?
Sure.
Of that?
So with an extract batch, something this size, you're gonna brew a more concentrated version of your beer. After the brewing process, you're going to get it into your fermenter, and then you're going to add water to hit that 5 gallons. Obviously, this isn't a 5-gallon kettle.
Right.
And so with a larger boil kettle, you can make sure to boil all 5 gallons. And that's actually going to affect your hop utilization and the amount of bitterness that's being contributed from those hops.
Okay. The other thing is we've also just mentioned extract brewing. Maybe talk about what extract is. Extract is versus
So
all grain.
the great thing about extract brewing is that it's jumping a whole step, so you can go right to the boiling process. So one of the main ingredients in beer making is malt. Malt comes from a variety of different grains, but as brewers, primarily what we're going to use is barley, malted barley. And malted barley provides sugar. This sugar is fermentable sugars that's going to be turned into alcohol, but sugar is also going to help add sweetness and color to the beer and mouthfeel and body. I guess basically when you're doing all grain, you're going to start off with that malted barley and you're going to put it through the mashing process.
Right.
And
So
during
you crush up the malted grain, the actual barley itself, and then steep it in water like you're making a big tea. Basically.
And the goal of that is you're going to take these natural starches that are inside the grain and convert that into sugar. And so that sugar, again, is what's going to be used by that yeast to create alcohol. Now with extract, they've already done that whole process for you,
and then
created
the water out of it and made it into a heavy syrup.
Heavy condensed version of basically ready to brew with wort.
Now, is there a big difference between an extract or all grain beer?
Some people will argue one way or the other. You can easily make great beer with extract.
And in fact, some brew pubs and things used extract for a long time. When they still do, probably starting out, because it's a little cheaper, easier to handle, and eliminates a little bit of some. of the steps.
I personally still use extract because it's quicker.
Right. Okay. So we've boiled our wort. What the next step is you're going to put it in a big fermentation container. It's a big, more than 5 gallon. Usually these are 7-gallon containers. It come with a top, and to that top, we'll cool this down. So you want to cool it down to room temperature. Pitch your yeast. That's the other thing that your homebrew supply store can help you with. There's a variety of different kinds of yeast. The yeast really does make the beer, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, I've heard people say before, yeast is almost the soul of the beer.
Right.
And so yeast comes in 2 different forms. We have ale yeast and lager yeast, depending on what type of beer you're going to make. Ale yeast being more of it's top fermenting, ferments a little warmer, is going to produce those fruity esters that you get with ales, whereas a lager yeast is a cold fermenting yeast, and you're going to get more of that clean, crisp lager characteristic that we've come to love and
And for
enjoy.
your typical home brewer, you're probably going to go with an ale your first batch.
Your first couple batches start off
room
with an ale.
temperature fermentation. It's easier to kick off in your basement or wherever. So you pitch your yeast, seal the top of this, and you add a little airlock. And this little device here is basically a one-way breather. Because what your yeast does is it eats sugar and it pees alcohol and farts CO2.
Yeah, so during the fermentation process, we get alcohol and then CO2. If we have this sealed environment and CO2 is being produced, it's going to build up, and we don't want it to explode.
Right.
And so it's coming out through this vessel that you'll fill with. People fill it with water, sometimes with sanitizer solution. The CO2 can escape through the top, but nothing can come back in, because we want to make sure that we have a clean, sealed environment for our
And let's
beer.
talk about that for a second. How important is keeping everything from beginning through bottling clean?
I think you ask any brewer, what's one of the most important tips or common mistakes that people make when they're brewing for the first time, and that's cleanliness and sanitation.
Right.
I think the best way to put it is, as brewers, our job is to create this perfect environment with the perfect food for this microorganism that's yeast so that it can make the best beer possible for us. However, that perfect environment is also a great place for other types of microorganisms, bacteria to get in. And I think I can speak for most brewers in saying that we don't want our beer to taste like sour milk.
Well,
some people
I don't know. Nowadays, we have sour beers, and sour beers have become very, very popular. And Brettanomyces is one of the key souring ingredients. Back in when I first started brewing beer, if I opened up a sour beer like that, I'd be pouring it all down the drain, saying, "Oh, this is terrible."
Not
Not now. This is one brand, one type of sanitizer. You dissolve this in hot water and basically rinse all of your equipment with it, and then rinse it again with clean water. It helps break down and kill any kind of contamination or dirt, and bacteria, and things that might be sitting on surfaces, such as your brew container, your airlock, and things like that.
And this is all stuff that's going to come in that beginner kit that you buy. And so
it'll all be there.
All these homebrew shops have a prepackaged beginner kit that you walk in. If you don't understand what all of it is, they're going to give it to you all in one big box. And they have all kinds of the stuff that you can resupply with as you go on your brewing adventures.
So once you get your your initial batch up in here, bubbling away, fermenting like crazy, it's gonna drop out, and you're gonna have dead yeast cells on the bottom. That's sometimes good for bottle conditioned beer, but in the brewing process, you want to get rid of that and put it into a secondary container with a spigot. The spigot has that way you can bottle out of this, but you're gonna siphon that beer, that wort, with a siphon tube and a hose that goes on the end of this. And so basically this goes into your bucket, siphon out your beer into your clean new bucket that you've rinsed with your sanitizer, and let it finish fermenting and basically clear out, right?
Yep. Secondary fermentation vessels are a great way to clarify the beer. If you want to make any sort of a flavor addition, you can put it in there.
Okay. A couple other little tools that'll come with a typical beginner kit that you need to really familiarize yourself with. A good thermometer. Temperature. How important is temperature?
Temperature is huge. As I mentioned with yeast, ale yeast ferments at warmer temperatures, lager yeast at cooler temperatures, but whatever that exact temperature is that you're going to ferment your beer at is really going to affect the final taste and outcome and just overall characteristic of the beer that you're going to brew.
Right, and when you pitch your yeast, you need to make sure your beer has cooled to a certain temperature.
Correct. 75 degrees is usually a great place to get your beer down to. Using that wort chiller, or you put it in an ice bath so that you have the beer at the right temperatures. When you throw the yeast in there and when you pitch it, it's not going to get shocked, and you're going to get a good clean fermentation.
Because you can actually kill your yeast if you pitch it when it's too hot.
You can.
Right. The other thing, another very important little device, is a hydrometer. What's this do?
So a hydrometer, you're going to take two measurements. After you have created your worts, you're going to take a measurement, and it's going to show you where it's at. It's essentially measuring the density of your beer. After fermentation, you're going to take another measurement, and you're going to see that it's a little bit less. Essentially what's happened is after fermentation, it's created that sugar and created a less dense product, and you're going to have the difference between the two is going to tell you how much alcohol is in the beer, essentially.
So you basically are measuring dissolved sugars.
Exactly.
And this will be sticking up in the air quite a bit. And then as it ferments, your dissolved sugars go away and are replaced by alcohol, much less dense than water and dissolved sugars. The difference in those two measurements basically will tell you on this little balling scale what your alcohol content is.
Sure.
And a lot of people are looking for, maybe a higher alcohol content beer for the holidays, a heavy imperial stout or some kind of holiday beer. So they really want to know what this is. This also helps to tell you, correct, when your fermentation is over. Right?
Yep. Yeah, it's a great indicator of when fermentation is done. A lot of people are going to look at the airlock, but airlock activity isn't always the best indicator. If you take a reading with your hydrometer and then you take a reading a second day and nothing's changed, fermentation's done. That's the best way to do it.
Great. With it being the gift-giving season, people are looking for maybe a starter kit like we've just kind of run through here. what else could somebody be looking for in addition to an
Sure.
American Homebrewers Association membership?
Sure.
What could they look at for different types of gifts and things for either a starting brewer or somebody who's been brewing for a while and wants to kind of kick their gear up a notch or two?
Well, I think we already kind of touched on real briefly that these fermentation vessels, the food grade plastic buckets are great, but you can go and upgrade to the glass fermentation vessels, these carboys that we use, and you can never have too many of those.
Right.
You know, even if it's just so that you can do that secondary fermentation, or if you want to have 2 beers fermenting at once, that's a great one to do. As I mentioned, most of the homebrewing beginner kits aren't going to come with that wort chiller, so that's a great place to kind of upgrade and speed up that brewing process.
Basically, what this does is the longer your beer is warm and sitting out in the open air, the more chance there is of bacteria and other wild yeasts landing in your beer and starting its fermentation on its own, separate from your yeast that you've bought to ferment that beer. This device, basically running cold water through it, and you get hot water out, helps to cool your beer and your wort down much quicker.
Yeah, the quicker you do it, the better chance you have of just getting your beer in there, sealing it up, and getting a good clean fermentation. I've done plenty of beers with an ice bath. It's just fine, but this is a fun little piece of equipment to add.
It probably eliminates 20-30 minutes to the
Sure.
to your chilling down process. I mean, this will take 10 or 15 minutes, and that the ice bath can take a good half hour. What other devices?
There's all kinds of educational resources that you can do as well. You know, we have our Brewers Publication Division where you can buy books like Charlie's Complete Joy of Homebrewing. If you don't have it yet as a beginner homebrewer, How to Brew by John Palmer as well is also a great book that you can access. There's
and those books, let me tell you, I have used the Joy of Homebrewing. It's a constant companion in the kitchen when I'm brewing beer. It's a great resource, easy to read, great index, gets you right to your information. As far as equipment goes, you mentioned glass carboys. What else could somebody might be interested in?
I was going to say brewing software is actually an interesting thing to add to the mix for someone that's looking to go from maybe the intermediate to more the advanced level. You get in there and you can build your own recipes and look at more the statistical side and the mathematics side of putting a recipe together. Great.
So, as far as the homebrewing hobby goes, tell me about your membership. I mean, this is still a really strong area of interest for people.
Yeah. So we're at 43,000 members nationwide right now. Since 2005, we've averaged 20% growth in membership. I mean, homebrewing is certainly on the uprise along with craft beer, and people love getting into it.
That's great. And the more you learn about how beer is made, the more you're interested in what you're drinking down at your local tap room.
Sure.
Great. Well, Steve, thank you very much for joining us here tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jim.
And for all you out there on the Colorado Beer Trail, don't forget, you can grab this issue of Introduction to Homebrewing. Is available at any of your homebrew supply shops. You can also go online.
Yeah, so if you go to the Homebrewers Association website, whether you're a member or a non-member, there's all kinds of educational resources that you can download and access. This being one of them. You know, it's a free guide, breaks down the brewing process, all the equipment that you need to get started, all the ingredients so that you understand it a little bit better. Yeah, so check it out, homebrewersassociation.org.
Right. If you're looking for something to stick in your stocking, this is a great start, and then maybe a good bottle of Imperial Stout for the Christmas holidays.
Yep, that's
Steve,
right.
thanks a lot, and if you're out on
Got
the
my
beer
sticker.
trail, all right. Well, let's apply.
All right.
So if you're out there on the Colorado Beer Trail, we'll see you out there, and maybe you make your own beer and drink on. As Charlie Papazian, the founder of the American Homebrewers Association, would say, relax, don't worry, have a homebrew, and 'tis the season for a homebrew.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, sir.